So one of the questions that I kind of annoyingly asked you in our first week's reading was, well, have you ever seen a triangle? And just what is a triangle? Now, this seems kind of annoying because you might say, of course I've seen a triangle. This is a ridiculous question. I mean, look, here's one right here. Boom, if you think I hadn't seen a triangle before, now there's one. Now we've all seen it. But I was pressing you on just what a triangle is because I've got kind of a weird view that that ain't a triangle. Now, why would I say that that's not a triangle? Well, I was asking you what a triangle is. Now, some of you said, well, it's a shape that's made out of three different line segments. Now, I pressed some of you further. I asked, well, what's a line segment? Some of you said, well, it's a collection of infinite points. Okay, sure. Now, I would ask you again if we were in class here. Now, just what exactly is a point supposed to be? Now, if you remember, what your geometry teachers probably tell you is, well, a point is something that is infinitesimally small. It has no width, no length, no height, no dimension at all. You put an infinite number of those end to end, and then you get a line. What's a line supposed to be? Well, it's something that has one dimension. It has length, but it's supposed to have no thickness at all, no height at all either. So, first thing to note, these marks of marker on the page here, those are not lines. A line or a line segment is supposed to have no thickness whatsoever. Gosh, these things are almost as thick as my whole finger. They even have height, right? Like they're on this page here. You can take a look and measure how thick the mark of ink is bleeding through the paper there. So this is not a thing that's made out of lines. In fact, if there were anything that was actually made out of lines, that was actually made out of something that had absolutely no thickness whatsoever, you couldn't possibly see it. It would only have one dimension. And so if a triangle is supposed to be something that's made out of three line segments, and line segments are these things that have no thickness, only length, well, you could never see those lines, and so you can never see a triangle. And so that leads me to my question, have you ever seen a triangle? I bet you the answer for all of us is no, of course not. We've never seen a triangle. But then the hard question comes, well, gosh, how the heck do you even know what a triangle is then if you've never seen one? Let alone, how do you know things like that the internal angles of a triangle sum to 180 degrees? If you've never actually seen a triangle, how can you know what it is, and how can you know anything about triangles? Now, the first thing that we're going to read this term is this dialogue, the Meno, by Plato. Plato is an ancient Greek philosopher who lived in what is now Greece about 350 years BC, and Plato tended to write in a dialogue form. So he writes these conversations between different characters. A lot of the characters are people who actually did live, and his chief character is Socrates. Socrates was Plato's teacher and is largely considered one of the founders of the Western tradition of philosophy. Now, we don't have anything that Socrates himself ever wrote, but we do have all of these dialogues that Plato wrote about Socrates. So Socrates is, got some of this sort of thinking in mind, where he's thinking, right, so if you've got something like a triangle that you've never actually seen and never had any experience with, how do you know anything about it? And then what we're going to see him do in the Meno is take things one step further. He's going to say, look, if someone just says to you, tell me what you know about triangles, if you don't even know what a triangle is, how could you even go figure out anything about what it is in the first place? Now, instead of triangles, Socrates and Meno, the person he's talking to, they're going to be trying to figure out at first just what exactly virtue is. The question is, well, what is virtue? And how can you come to know what it is to be virtuous? How do you be a good person? Well, it seems like you'd have to know something about what it is to be good, but if you don't know what it is to be good in the first place, how would you ever know whether you've discovered what's good and what's bad? So that's the initial problem they start on, and then they just get down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out, right, yeah, gosh, if you don't know what it is you're looking for in the first place, how are you ever going to know whether they found it? So, Socrates is going to have an answer to that very tricky problem, and so as you read, try and figure out what Socrates' answer to the problem is, and then we can discuss whether you think that his answer is correct. And you can even see if his answer is going to tell you how it is that you know about triangles, even though, if I'm right, you've never actually seen or experienced a triangle yourself.